Well, our own particular emperor here. This is a painting that I did. I did this picture back in 1985. It's the first trial of Governor Edwin Edwards. That's what it represents. I was hired by Vanity Fair magazine to do an illustration for my friend Nancy Lemon's article that she was writing about the governor's trial. Now, the thing is, Nancy never did the article because she decided to turn it into a book, and the book is called The Writs of the Bayou. So the article became a book. Vanity Fair never used the picture, but they paid me to do it, and I had it, and I sold it to a doctor in Lake Charles. But what it represents is Governor Edwards walking through Lafayette Square with his attorneys, Camille Gravel and Jim Neal. And they're walking past the statue of Benjamin Franklin, which is still there, and it says, "Save while you are young, to spend while you are old." Or a penny saved is a penny earned, right? And of course, here's all the media at the time. They were, you know, because they're walking over to the federal courts building where the trial was. And I was also the court artist for the Times-Picayune. I did a lot of the drawings of the trial. The first, I guess, maybe the first 2 weeks, and anyway, so I was really well aware of the whole sort of mise en scène of the trial. And anyway, to make a long story short, I saw Camille Gravel. It was coming out of the courthouse, and I said, "Mr. Gravel, could you come please pose for me? I'm doing a picture of you and Edwin Edwards." He said, "Oh, I'd love to," right? And he came over, and I said, "Could you kind of look conspiratorial?" So, you know, he didn't pose in the sense that, you know, he didn't linger in my studio for hours. I took a picture of him. They said, you know, like this, go like that. He did. Fabulous Louisiana type. He was one of the defense attorneys, and this fellow over here was from Nashville, Jim Neal, and he was real good. You know, the first day I was in the trial, he came up, he stood up and did his opening argument, and you could see the jury just went, like this. And it kind of reminded me of why Cicero took acting lessons, because you could see the jury was being swayed just by the guy's presence. It was, and, you know, and Edwards won that trial. He wasn't convicted. But later on, a friend of mine, well, during the trial, was a friend of Edwards, politician. She said, "Yeah, maybe could you think we could show him the picture?" I said, "Yeah, bring him over." So he came up to my attic at 604 Julia Street, and he looked at the picture and said, "You made me too short." I said, "It's artistic license, sir." I said, because I had to have a little bounce here, you know, see a little curve like that. So, you know, you always, when you do a picture, there's really two things you're dealing with. There's the form and the content. The form is what you see. It's the abstracted image. It's how it works, the nuts and bolts of the picture. Now, the content is the content. I mean, it's the story you're telling. But I said, well, you know, because everything functions has to function not just as the content, but also as the form. And the thing is, the irony of the whole thing is that I was told this when I was in graduate school. There's always a way out. You know, you have a problem with wedding the form and the content, but there's always, if you know what you're doing, if you know exactly, if you can distance yourself enough to where you see the thing as an abstraction, and you're willing to do it. Now, there's a lot of times you're not willing to do it because the mind just wants you to go to sleep. It gets sick of the whole task, and your brain will say, "Please stop torturing me. Stop working at this thing. Go to sleep. Go to sleep." Because Salvador Dali talks about how sleep is one of the dangers that an artist has to face, because what happens is your brain shifts to the beta phase, which is really the phase that right before you go to sleep. And he recommends, Salvador Dali, a very practical man, he says, when you feel sleepy, he says, make sure you have an easy chair in your studio. And then sit in the easy chair, and on one arm of the easy chair at the base, put a pie pan. And then take a soup spoon and put it between your index finger and your thumb. And when you start to fall asleep, you'll relax your thumb and forefinger, and the spoon will hit the pan and wake you up. So that you go back to work, right? Now, I don't quite do it that way, but anyway, I'm just jaw-jawing about that. But anyway, but this is a pretty accurate depiction of that space too. There's the old City Hall in the background, And those are real, these were real cameramen that I don't know where they are now. And this is somebody who had been passing by. He's a passer, but that's a real portrait too. I like to use real faces in my pictures because, you know, there's more realism, there's more of a sense of psychology at work. Because in a lot of ways, particularly when you're using figurative work, the expression of the eyes create a directional line that that's not even there in the formal aspect of the painting. So that's kind of where the content crosses over into form. Like for instance, if you see a picture of a woman, say, you know, this fellow's looking at you, or he's looking over here. Well, it's creating these directional lines that are based upon your impression of the psychology. In other words, the thing isn't really even there. So there's a sort of what would you call a psychic realm that narrative, particularly narrative paintings, explore. That maybe an abstracted picture wouldn't really do that. You know, there's two types of paintings. It's a friend of mine tells me. He says there's the generic and then there's the associative. Now this is an associative picture because you're associating it with the trial of Governor Edwards. That's Governor Edwards. It's associated, this image is associated with him. It's associated with a particular time, okay? A generic picture is a formal painting. In other words, my friend would say that it grows up out of the sheer fact of the rectangle. In other words, an abstracted picture which is based on, well, in other words, a formal painting. It's the nuts and bolts of the picture. And I would counter, though, that the oldest painting on earth has just been discovered. And it was discovered in a cave in Spain. They estimate it's about 35,000 years old. And it's a picture of a seal, right? It's a seal. So it's an associative picture. It's only, you know, what happens is in art, it's like what Hume says about culture itself, that the longer you think about it, the more philosophical things become. And the more withdrawn it becomes from reality itself. And that the task of a philosopher is to take that distance that he's created between him and reality and reintegrate it back into real life. So in a sense, to me, that's what figurative painting does. It takes the abstracted and brings it back into the sort of the drama of life itself, which is essentially a narrative phenomena, beginning, middle, and end. Birth, life, death, right? That's kind of what, well, I'm joking.